On December 4th, 1998, Rita Politte was working her usual evening shift bartending at a local watering hole. Michael Politte, her 14-year-old son, who went by his middle name Bernie, decided to kill some time by biking over to the general store to meet up with his buddy, Josh Sansucci. The 14-year-old knuckleheads played some pool, hit up an old graveyard for kicks, and played some video games back at Michael's trailer when they got bored. Around 11 p.m. in peak teenage wisdom, they grabbed some gasoline and headed to the railroad tracks to set stuff on fire. Hey, sounds like a totally sane plan for two adolescents home alone, right? Once they had their fiery fun, the boys went back to the trailer. A little after midnight, Rita came home after being at the bar with her friends and brought them some sandwiches. After saying goodnight, she crashed in her bedroom while Michael invited Josh to spend the night, crashing on the floor of his room. Neither could have imagined the nightmare that was about to unfold. In the early morning hours of December 5th, Michael woke up to the acrid smell of smoke filling his room. At first, he thought maybe Josh had tried sneaking a cigarette, but as he opened his bedroom door, Michael was met with a glowing horror. Thick black smoke pouring from his mother's room. He could see her legs on the floor through the haze, and the sickening hungry licks of flames engulfing her upper body. In a sheer panic, Michael screamed for his mom, but got no response. Josh had already bolted from the room to get help from neighbors. Michael grabbed a garden hose, but it wouldn't reach far enough into the raging inferno to put out the flames overtaking his mother's entire form. By the time first responders rushed to the scene, it was too late. Rita Politte, just 40 years old, had been brutally murdered. She was discovered lying on her back, legs askew, wearing only her underwear. The medical examiner ruled she had sustained severe blows to the head and was likely knocked unconscious before her killer doused her in gasoline and set her alight, burning her from the pubic region to her face. Blood was smeared across the walls, bed sheets, and even the light switch, evidence of Rita's desperate struggle against her attacker in those final moments. As police and firefighters swarmed the trailer, you can only imagine the anguish her son Michael was suffering. This was his mom, the person who raised him as a single parent, who cheered him on at every baseball game, who showered him with endless love and gave him a home where they could just be happy together. And now, she was gone, taken in an act of unspeakable savagery, right in their own home, the one place they should have been safest. But as deep as Michael's pain ran, his shock was about to take a horrific turn, because barely 48 hours after this brutality, the very same police officers who were supposed to be finding Rita's killer arrested her own 14-year-old child for the murder. But from the moment they arrived at that smoldering crime scene, investigators had instantly laser-focused on Michael as their prime suspect. Why? According to them, he failed to show enough visible emotion over his mother's death. Yes, really. Because a traumatized teenage boy didn't perform grief to their satisfaction, they decided he must be a cold-blooded killer. Never mind that Michael had no defensive wounds, no bloodstains, no discernible motive whatsoever to murder the person he loved most in this world. Oh, and zero evidence actually tying him to the horrendous acts. The cops were convinced by Michael's anguished stoicism that he was putting on an act. This despite being a normal, goofy kid who enjoyed silly things like setting random objects on fire, as boys are known to do. The police interrogated Michael relentlessly, ignoring glaring holes in their harebrained theories. His story matched up with Josh's. He had zero injuries or accelerant residue on his clothes, yet those details didn't matter. All the cops cared about was their scientific hunches that Michael must be guilty based on his perceived emotional flatness after having his world shattered. They even claimed a dog picked up the scent of gasoline on Michael's shoes, though real chemical analysis would later confirm it was just residue from the manufacturing process, not an accelerant. Every piece of evidence they touted was eventually dismantled, but in the heat of the moment, with their understandable drive for answers about this atrocity, the police willfully bought into their own biases. This poor kid, reeling from apocalyptic trauma, had absolutely no chance once their minds were made up. Which brings us to Michael's shambolic trial that began in January 2002, nearly 4 years after his nightmare began, with the deck stacked by a prosecution who accused him of confessing during a suicide attempt, then doubling down on the gasoline fairy tale, and repeatedly played on jurors' prejudices against surly teenagers. The proceedings had all the makings of a circus act. Astoundingly, the defense barely lifted a finger to actually defend Michael. His public defender was so overmatched, he just called 3 witnesses, nor did he present any evidence of other potential suspects, like Rita's ex-husband Ed, or his cousin Johnny, who multiple people placed near the trailer right after the murder. Ed had been ordered to pay Rita a hefty settlement, over $900 a month, just days before she died. He'd raged in court that Rita would never see a penny of it. There was also a history of DV between them. Ed claimed an airtight alibi for the morning Rita was killed, but evidence suggests Johnny may have been present or involved at Ed's behest. That there were other people with obvious motives to wish harm on Rita was completely glossed over by both the prosecution and Michael's own legal team. Meanwhile, jurors heard about utterly meaningless details like Michael checking on his late mom's truck, which prosecutors ludicrously tried spinning as indicative of a guilty conscience before the body was even cold. I don't know about you, but after a trauma like losing your whole world, I can understand asking about her prized possession out of sheer shock and trying to maintain some thread to normality. But none of that mattered once the prosecution drove home the big lie, that Michael confessed to killing Rita during his suicide attempt. 3 facility workers claim they overheard him say, "I haven't cried since I killed my mom." Except Michael insists he said, "I haven't cared since they killed my mom." Just one little word difference that completely changes the whole meaning. But the jury never got to weigh that distinction, nor got to hear from Josh, or see his initial police statement that corroborated Michael's alibi. After just 5 hours of deliberation, an innocent, naive 14-year-old kid was railroaded into the unthinkable, convicted of killing his own beloved mother in a heinous, monstrous way. He was 18 years old when he learned he'd spend the rest of his life behind bars. As his sister sobbed in the gallery, Michael's once bright future, his hopes and dreams, his very youth, all were snatched away in that moment, based on nothing but harmful delusions. For the next 2 decades, Michael Politte remained in prison while maintaining his innocence at every turn. He had to join a skinhead gang just to find basic protection against the brutalities of being housed as such a young inmate. His troubled youth spiraled into drug addiction as he tried to self-medicate through hopelessness. But a small ray of light pierced through in 2007 when he wrote to the Midwest Innocence Project, begging them to take his case. For years, attorney Tricia Bushnell, Megan Crane, and Mark Emerson fought tirelessly to unpick the densely woven knot of injustice that had ensnared Michael. They dismantled every pillar of the state's case, piece by piece, through dogged investigation and forensic scrutiny. The so-called gas on the shoes evidence, a complete farce, just chemical residue from the manufacturing process, as even the Missouri Crime Lab now acknowledges. The testimony about an accelerant being used to burn Rita's body, antiquated bunk based on easily debunked folklore in the fire investigation, and Michael's alleged confession, a tragic game of telephone where stressed workers on a juvenile ward simply processed his haunting words through their own bias. With every avenue for appeal blocked by stubbornly skeptical courts, Michael watched years melt away in anguish. That's when an astonishing, serendipitous break finally arrived. Missouri passed a new law in 2021, allowing juvenile offenders to receive parole hearings for serious crimes. After serving over 2 decades behind bars as an innocent man, Michael went before the board and pleaded his case once more. On April 22nd, 2022, the day Michael's sisters Melanie and Crystal had spent over 20 years praying for, finally came. They raced to the prison gates with dear friends in tow, clutching a spare set of clothes, as per protocol for an inmate earning release. And there he was, their baby brother, now a 38-year-old parcel of graying hair and tattooed anguish from sacrificing his entire youth to this unthinkable purgatory, emerging from those steel gates into the welcomed embrace of his loved ones and freedom. But for Michael, release alone isn't enough. To this day, his record remains branded with the utterly unconscionable conviction for murdering his own flesh and blood. True exoneration must come through the courts, a declaration of innocence from the very system that railroaded him so violently.